any specific questions for any of these speakers that we can address now? So I did just want to make one point that just to echo something that Dr. Waterberg was speaking to about the fact that there's so many different international networks as well that we really haven't touched upon much here in the discussions, and I think is worth having further discussions with groups just to keep that that collaboration open as a possibility. I always remember the phrase, the eyes don't see what the mind doesn't know. So I think increasing that level of knowledge of what's even out there for all of us to continue to work on, I think is really key. And maybe one of the follow-up things that we can work on from this particular meeting with the KRCC is also getting an idea of other international groups that we should be interacting with and letting them know either about imprint resources, about further collaborations. I see a hand raised from Jonathan Davis. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question or comment?
Yes, thanks. Just interested, and maybe Christy can address this and some of the others about data sharing with the networks. And I know, Christy, you had mentioned that a lot of the data will go up to the dash. We find that it takes years to get there. And you have to apply for it, and it's a very cumbersome process. I really think it is going to be essential if we want to move any of these enterprises forward to have a streamlined, easy way to be able to access both maternal and fetal and neonatal and pediatric data, and to be able to share it among investigators who have high priority. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next session, but I just wanted to ask these investigators if there aren't ways, and others, that we can share data, de-identified data, obviously, much more easily.
So John, you're right, it takes a while, but then you cannot pull out that information until the trial is done and the data are analyzed and published. And so, you can't open that database to anyone until you know the validity of the database, you've cleaned it, you've locked it, you've published it and all. And as I was saying, the studies, at least for the neonatal network, can take so many years just to get done. On the other hand, we have sort of done collaborative work. When we looked at the studies that were doing oxygen targeting, that was set up ahead of time to include not just the neonatal network study, but also 3 other studies that were done in different countries around the world. So I think there should be ways to do this, but it is very difficult and very cumbersome to try and figure out how to protect your trial and still make the data available.
So I would like to just make a point that the Alzheimer's disease, I know it's like the opposite end of the age spectrum from neonatal studies, but one of the things ADNI did was, which was absolutely frightening in the beginning, was they make all the data that they can available as soon as the sample and as soon as the data is there. In fact, for the samples that are, so like if the Biomarkers Consortium wishes to use ADNI samples to do a study, they get the samples, they have to upload the data, and this is true for all of the PIs as well. They have to upload the biomarker data into the database before they get the clinical data that's associated with that. So it is available, the data is available to the public as fast as it's available, well, as fast as it's generated, and of course, made sure that the actual assay was done correctly and is valid and what have you. Doesn't work for everything. That's not going to work for everything, but there are approaches that NIH has embraced to make that data publicly available, even before sometimes those publications go out.
I see Tina Chambers, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question for Dr. Manetsky. It does, maybe this is naive, but it does seem like the foundation would be sort of a natural partner for a public-private partnership relative to pregnancy and lactation. And is this something that has ever been considered by the foundation?
So yes. So one of the things that we're talking about, it's as you can hear, getting industry funding for programs in that area is difficult. But I think, and we've knocked on that door a lot. We've got some things. I think we are currently now thinking about what are alternative private entities that we might be able to address or discuss, talk to in order to make some of these things happen. I mean, the idea that with the preeclampsia program, it's a very, and Erin can talk about it more than I can, but it's a very well thought out program, but it's in a population that is a little bit, makes people a little nervous in industry. But if we can get a clear signal for industry to show which populations, subpopulations are more at risk, or they're going to jump in and do something. I mean, again, you got to be able to run the trial. You got to be able to identify the outcome measure. And so sometimes it's, what FNIH is doing is trying to lower the activation energy so that it's less of a scary endeavor to jump in, because you can kind of see over the hill.
And maybe I hear where you're going about the trials, but even for observational studies, industry is putting billions of dollars into doing these in a very inefficient manner.
Mm-hmm.
And could there be a much more efficient way to do it, that they get what they need out of it, and it pushes the field forward in a much better manner?
Yeah, I go back to ADNI, and initially there was a lot of trials being run. Now pretty much every Alzheimer's trial is kind of ADNI with a drug, because it makes sense, right? So if you had that same mentality for other things, it could help.
Great, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. It certainly sounds like an example. Peter just posted that he has also done analyses on data from ADNI and posted it quickly, and it seems to be really in an efficient way and a good example. I don't see any other questions. I think with that, I'll close this section of the parade on networks with biomarkers and clinical endpoints, and I'll hand over the baton to Sarah Van Driest.